came home early from a work trip, found my 8-year-old daughter alone scrubbing the floor as punishment. In-laws took their real grandkid to an amusement park. I didn't cry, didn't scream, just did what I had to. By morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Can you imagine walking into your home 2 days early from a work trip, expecting a sweet reunion, only to find your 8-year-old daughter alone on her hands and knees, scrubbing the kitchen floor as punishment? My in-laws had taken their real granddaughter to an amusement park. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just knew in that moment what I had to do. By the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. My name's Amber Wilson. I'm 32, and absolutely nothing prepares you for seeing your child in such a heartbreaking situation. My marketing career often takes me away, but coming home early that day changed everything. Madison, my sweet 8-year-old, trembled when I walked in. My in-laws, Robert and Eleanor Henderson, Scott's parents, had never fully accepted her since I married their son. What happened next would redefine our family forever, as I share how I protected my daughter when no one else would. The journey to motherhood. I've always been career-driven, working my way up in digital marketing while juggling motherhood. But make no mistake, Madison has always been my priority, my heart walking outside my body. Some days the balance feels impossible, but we make it work. I met Scott Henderson 6 years ago at a friend's barbecue. Madison was just 2 then, a curly-haired toddler who stole everyone's hearts, including Scott's. From day one, he'd get on the floor to play with her, read her stories with all the silly voices, and never once treated her differently because she wasn't biologically his. Madison came into my life through tragedy. My cousin Stephanie had been my best friend since childhood. When she and her husband died in a horrific car accident, their daughter, Madison, had no one else. I was 24, single, and terrified, but I knew I had to step up. The adoption process was emotional but necessary. Madison deserved stability and love, and I promised to give her both for the rest of her life. When Scott proposed a year after we met, he included Madison in the sweetest way. He got down on one knee with 2 rings, one for me and a small heart necklace for Madison, and asked if we would both do him the honor of becoming his family. After the wedding, Scott legally adopted Madison too. On paper, and in our hearts, we were a complete family unit. The subtle sting of favoritism, that's when I met Robert and Eleanor Henderson, Scott's parents. They seemed pleasant enough, if a bit reserved. They brought gifts for Madison, but their smiles didn't quite reach their eyes when they hugged her. I chalked it up to them needing time to warm up to this instant family situation. She's a pretty little thing, Eleanor had commented, studying Madison's features. Doesn't look much like either of you though, does she? The comment stung, but Scott quickly explained that Madison was adopted, and I appreciated how he said it matter-of-factly, without apology or qualification. Then there was Michael, Scott's younger brother, and his daughter Lily. By coincidence, Lily was also 8, born just 2 months after Madison. The cousins got along well, playing together at family gatherings while the adults watched. But I started noticing patterns at these events. The grandparents would bring 2 gifts, but Lily's was always larger or more expensive. They'd take photos with both girls, but post only the ones with Lily on social media. When Madison would speak, Eleanor sometimes seemed to not hear her, yet she'd hang on Lily's every word. Scott noticed too. After a particularly obvious Christmas, where Lily received a tablet while Madison got coloring books, he confronted his parents privately. "Madison is my daughter," he told them firmly. "I need you to treat her with the same love and attention you give to Lily." They denied any favoritism. "Of course not. You're being oversensitive," Robert had dismissed. "We love both the girls equally. Madison just seems more interested in arts and crafts." But the pattern continued. At Easter, they'd hide more eggs for Lily to find. At Thanksgiving, they'd ask Lily about school but not Madison. Small things, perhaps, but they accumulated like tiny paper cuts on Madison's sense of belonging. "Why doesn't Grandma Eleanor ask me to bake cookies with her like she does with Lily?" Madison asked once, her voice small. I had no good answer. I tried to compensate by creating special traditions just for us. Scott was wonderfully supportive, always validating Madison's feelings while trying to maintain peace in the family. "They're from a different generation," he'd say. "They'll come around eventually." I wasn't so sure, but I respected his desire to believe the best about his parents. A forced hand, this delicate family ecosystem, was what made my recent business trip so complicated. I'd been putting off the Chicago conference for months, but when my boss made it clear that my presence was non-negotiable for this potential client meeting, I finally relented. Scott assured me he would take care of everything with Madison, school drop-offs, dance class, homework, the whole routine. "We'll be fine, babe," he promised, kissing my forehead as I fretted over my packing list. "Madison and I will have a daddy-daughter weekend. Maybe we'll build that birdhouse we've been talking about." Madison seemed okay with the plan too, excited about special time with Scott. Everything was arranged perfectly until it wasn't. 2 days before my departure, Scott received an urgent call from his company's Boston office. A major client was threatening to pull their account, and as a senior account manager, Scott's presence was required immediately. We scrambled to find alternative childcare options. Our regular babysitter was away at college, and our backup was already committed. Scott suggested his parents. They've been asking to spend more time with Madison, he reasoned. This could be good for their relationship. I hesitated, remembering all those small moments of favoritism. I don't know, Scott. Maybe my mom could fly in from Arizona on such short notice. And she just had that knee surgery, Scott reminded me. Look, I know my parents aren't perfect, but they're capable caregivers. It's just 3 days, and I'll be back before you. Reluctantly, I agreed. We didn't have many options, and I wanted to believe it could be a turning point in their relationship with Madison. Maybe some one-on-one time was exactly what they needed. The uneasy feeling the morning I left, Eleanor and Robert arrived at our house with overnight bags. We've got everything under control, Eleanor assured me, barely making eye contact as she scrolled through her phone. We raised 2 boys, you know. One little girl will be a breeze. I knelt down to Madison's level. Be good for Grandma and Grandpa, okay? I'll call every night, and Daddy will be back in 3 days. Madison nodded bravely, though I could see uncertainty in her eyes. I'll be okay, Mommy. I'll help with chores and everything. You don't need to worry about chores, sweetie. Just be a kid and have fun, I said, hugging her tightly. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Love you to the moon and back, she whispered our usual goodbye. My Chicago meetings were back-to-back, but I made time each evening to video call Madison. The first night, she seemed fine if a bit quiet. She reported that they'd had spaghetti for dinner and watched a movie afterward. Are you having fun with Grandma and Grandpa? I asked. It's okay, she said, shrugging. Grandma made me pick up my toys twice. She said I was messy. I frowned slightly. Madison was actually quite tidy for an 8-year-old. Well, remember it's their house rules while they're there. Just 2 more days, sweetie. The second night, our call was briefer. Robert answered instead of Madison, saying she was finishing her dinner and would call back. But that call never came. When I tried again before bed, Eleanor answered, sounding irritated. Madison's already asleep. She was overtired from playing all day. We'll have her call you tomorrow. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Scott called later to say his meetings in Boston were running longer than expected. My parents are okay with staying an extra day, he said. I should be back the day after tomorrow, and you'll be home the day after that. The shocking discovery on the day of my trip, something unexpected happened. The client we'd been courting decided to sign early, canceling our final 2 days of meetings. Suddenly, I found myself with the opportunity to fly home early. Are you sure you don't want to stay and do some sightseeing? My colleague asked. Chicago's beautiful this time of year, but all I could think about was getting home to Madison. The brief, awkward calls with my in-laws had left me uneasy. I booked the available flight, deciding not to tell anyone I was coming home early. I'd surprise Madison and relieve my in-laws earlier than expected. A win for everyone. During the flight, I found myself increasingly anxious to get home. I tried calling the house from the airport after landing, but no one answered. I texted Scott to let him know I was heading home early. That's great, he responded, still stuck in Boston. Client issues more complicated than expected. Love you both. As I drove from the airport, I felt a growing sense of anticipation mixed with an inexplicable dread. I chalked it up to travel fatigue and maternal guilt for being away. I couldn't wait to see Madison's face when I walked through the door unexpectedly. I imagined her squeals of delight, the running hug, the stream of stories she'd want to tell me all at once. But as I pulled into our neighborhood, I noticed something odd. Robert and Eleanor's car wasn't in the driveway. It was a Thursday afternoon. Where would they have gone with Madison? Perhaps to the park, or for ice cream. Still, something didn't feel right. I parked in the driveway and grabbed my luggage. The spring air was surprisingly cool as I made my way to the front door. Our house seemed unusually quiet as I entered. Hello, Madison. Anyone home? I called out, setting down my bags in the entryway. The silence that greeted me sent a chill down my spine. I moved through the house, calling Madison's name with increasing urgency. The living room was empty, though I noticed Madison's favorite stuffed rabbit, Mr. Flopsy, discarded on the floor, unusual, as she rarely went anywhere without him. The dining room showed signs of a hasty lunch, crumbs on the table, a half-empty glass of water. Madison! I called again, my voice echoing through the quiet house. Then I heard it, a small sound coming from the kitchen, a quiet sniffling, followed by the distinct sound of scrubbing. I rushed toward the noise, my heart pounding. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when I entered the kitchen. Madison was on her hands and knees on the cold tile floor, a large brush in her small hands, scrubbing vigorously at the white tiles. A bucket of soapy water sat beside her. Her face was streaked with dried tears, her curls damp with sweat. She was wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in during our brief video call the night before. She didn't notice me at first, so focused was she on a particular spot on the floor. I stood frozen in the doorway, trying to process the scene before me. Madison! I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. She startled, the brush clattering to the floor as her head whipped around. For a split second, Fear flashed across her face, a look I'd never seen directed at me before recognition dawned. Mommy! Her voice was small, uncertain, as if she couldn't quite believe I was really there. I crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and knelt beside her, not caring that the knees of my business slacks were soaking up the soapy water on the floor. Baby, what are you doing? Where are Grandma and Grandpa? Madison's lower lip trembled as fresh tears welled in her eyes. I'm sorry, Mommy. I spilled grape juice this morning and made a big mess. Grandma said I needed to learn responsibility, so I have to clean the whole kitchen floor before they get back. My blood ran cold. The whole floor? Madison, where do they go? She looked down, her small shoulders slumping. They took Lily to Adventure World, the amusement park with the big roller coasters. They left you here alone. I struggled to keep my voice calm, though rage was building inside me. Madison nodded. Grandma said I couldn't go because I wouldn't appreciate it like Lily would. She said Lily deserves special treats because she's their real granddaughter. Her voice broke on the last words, and my heart shattered along with it. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her small body tremble against mine. How long have you been alone, sweetheart? Since after breakfast, she whispered against my shoulder. Grandma said they'd be back for dinner. She said I'd better have the floor spotless by then, or I wouldn't get any dessert. And I needed to think about why I'm so clumsy all the time. For hours. They'd left my 8-year-old daughter alone for 4 hours, on her hands and knees scrubbing floors, while they took their real granddaughter to an amusement park. I felt physically ill. Has this happened before? Them leaving you alone? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Madison hesitated, then nodded. Yesterday, they went shopping with Lily. They said I couldn't come because I whined too much about being bored. They were gone a long time. I was scared. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears of rage and guilt. What else happened while I was away, Madison? You can tell me anything. I promise I won't be mad at you. Her story spilled out in fits and starts. How Lily had been given new toys while Madison watched. How Madison had been made to help with chores, dishes, dusting, picking up, while Lily played. How Eleanor had repeatedly made comments about Madison not really being family and not having Henderson blood. Grandma said I should be grateful that you and Daddy took me in because nobody else wanted me, Madison said, her voice so matter-of-fact that it was clear she believed it. She said I'm lucky because I could have ended up in an orphanage. Each word was like a knife to my heart. I held Madison tighter, rocking her gently. Listen to me very carefully, Madison Elizabeth Wilson Henderson. You are not lucky we took you in. We are the lucky ones. Every single day, I thank my lucky stars that I get to be your mom. You are the most precious, most important person in my life. And I am so sorry this happened. You're not mad at me for spilling the juice? She asked in a small voice. Of course not. Accidents happen. Everyone spills things sometimes, I assured her, brushing back her damp curls. No one should ever make you clean an entire floor as punishment, and they absolutely should never, ever have left you alone. That was wrong of them, not you. I helped Madison to her feet, noticing for the first time how exhausted she looked. There were angry red marks on her knees from kneeling on the hard floor for so long, and her hands were pruned and raw from the cleaning solution. Let's get you cleaned up and then we're going to have some ice cream, I said decisively, leading her to the bathroom. As I helped her wash her hands and face, my mind raced with fury and plans. Am I in trouble with Grandma when they come back? Madison asked as I applied lotion to her chapped hands. No, baby. You're not in trouble with anyone, I said firmly. But Grandma and Grandpa are in very big trouble with me. Madison's eyes widened. Are you going to yell at them? I considered this, taking a deep breath. No, I'm not going to yell. But I am going to make sure this never happens again. No one treats my daughter this way. No one. A mother's resolve after getting Madison cleaned up, I took her for ice cream at her favorite shop downtown. As she happily worked her way through a rainbow sherbet cone, I studied her closely, noticing things I'd missed in my initial shock. She seemed thinner after just a few days, with dark circles under her eyes. Her usual animated chatter was subdued, and she kept glancing at me as if for reassurance. Madison, I need you to tell me everything that happened while I was gone, I said gently. Not just today, but all 3 days. Even things you think might make me sad or upset. It's really important. Slowly, between licks of ice cream, Madison opened up. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd feared. The first day had been okay, tense but manageable. By the second day, the differential treatment had become blatant. Lily had been allowed to watch TV, while Madison had to read quietly. When both girls had gotten excited and loud during a game, only Madison had been scolded for being out of control. Grandma said Lily knows how to act like a proper young lady because she is good breeding, Madison reported, clearly not understanding the full implication of the words. What does breeding mean, Mommy? Like dogs. I swallowed hard. It's a very old-fashioned and incorrect way of talking about families. Grandma shouldn't have said that. Then came the revelation that Madison had been made to eat different food, simpler, less favored options, while Lily got her preferred meals. When Madison had asked for the same chicken nuggets Lily had, Eleanor had told her. Those are special for Lily. You can have a sandwich. The amusement park trip wasn't the only outing Madison had been excluded from either. They'd taken Lily to a movie the previous afternoon, leaving Madison at home with stern instructions to think about her behavior. What behavior? I asked, keeping my voice neutral despite my rising anger. Madison shrugged. Grandma said I was disrespectful when I asked if I could have dessert like Lily did. But Lily got ice cream and I didn't get any. Was that bad to ask? No, sweetheart. That wasn't bad at all, I assured her. By the time we finished our ice cream, I had made up my mind. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a one-time poor decision. This was a pattern of emotional abuse and neglect directed at my child, and it ended today. The confrontation in the car, I tried calling Scott again, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent him a text instead. Call me ASAP. Emergency with your parents and Madison. At home, I ran Madison a bubble bath, something she loved, and let her play while I paced in the hallway, phone in hand. When Scott finally called back, his voice was tense with worry. What's wrong? Is Madison okay? I stepped into our bedroom and closed the door before letting everything spill out. Finding Madison alone, the scrubbing, the amusement park, all of it. Scott's initial disbelief quickly gave way to horror, then rage. They left her alone for hours? His voice rose with each word. And they said those things to her about not being real family? Yes, I confirmed, keeping my voice low so Madison wouldn't hear. Scott, this is beyond favoritism. This is emotional abuse. And leaving an 8-year-old alone for hours is neglect, possibly even criminal. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, I'm coming. Home. I'll get the next flight out. What about your client? Screw the client, Scott said with a vehemence I rarely heard from him. My daughter comes first. Always. The word daughter, not stepdaughter or your daughter, but simply daughter, warmed something in my chest, even amid the anger and pain. Scott, I said carefully, we need to decide how to handle this before they come back. They'll be here for dinner, and I'm not letting them just walk in like nothing happened. I want them out of our house, Scott said immediately. And I don't want them alone with Madison, ever again. I agree, I said, relieved we were on the same page. But we need to be strategic. I don't want to cause a scene in front of Madison or Lily. The girls shouldn't witness an adult confrontation. We discussed options, and finally settled on a plan. Scott would try to get home as soon as possible, but in the meantime, I would deal with his parents calmly but firmly. They would be told to pack their things and leave, either to a hotel or back home. We would make it clear that their unsupervised access to Madison was permanently revoked. They're going to fight this, Scott warned. They'll say we're overreacting, that leaving her alone wasn't a big deal, that kids need discipline. Let them, I said, a new steel in my voice. I don't care what excuses they make. They left our daughter alone for hours after making her feel worthless. There's no coming back from that. After hanging up, I checked on Madison, who was happily playing with her bath toys, seemingly more relaxed now. I sat on the edge of the tub and helped her wash her hair, fighting back tears as I noticed a small bruise on her shoulder. How did you get this, sweetie? I asked casually. Oh, Madison said, barely glancing at it. Grandma grabbed me there when I dropped a plate yesterday. It was an accident, though. I was being clumsy. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm for Madison's sake. That's not being clumsy. That's just being a normal kid. An adult should never grab children hard enough to leave marks, even if they're frustrated. After her bath, I helped Madison into her favorite pajamas. Though it was only late afternoon, she needed comfort now, not proper dinner attire. We cuddled on the couch, watching her favorite movie, and I explained in age-appropriate terms what would happen next. Grandma and Grandpa made some very bad choices, I told her. The kind of choices that mean they can't be trusted to take care of you properly, so they won't be staying here anymore. Madison looked up at me, her eyes wide. Are they in trouble? Yes, I said honestly. Big trouble. What they did was wrong, and there are consequences for that. Will I still see Lily? She asked, her voice small. My heart ached. Despite everything, she was worried about losing her cousin. Of course you will. Lily didn't do anything wrong, and neither did you. This is about the grown-up's behavior, not yours. As the afternoon wore on, I checked the time repeatedly. It was approaching 5:30 p.m., typically dinner time in our household. Soon, the in-laws would return with Lily, and I needed to be ready. I asked Madison to play in her room when they arrived, promising to call her down later. Are you sure you're not mad at me, Mommy? She asked as I tucked Mr. Flopsy into her arms. I have never been more sure of anything in my life, I told her, kissing her forehead. I love you more than you could ever know. As I closed Madison's door, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I squared my shoulders and went downstairs to meet them. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. No one would ever make my daughter feel unwanted in her own home again. The front door swung open with a burst of laughter. Eleanor entered, holding shopping bags emblazoned with the Adventure World logo. Behind her came Robert, carrying a tired-looking Lily on his shoulders. None of them noticed me standing in the living room entryway until I cleared my throat. Eleanor jumped, clutching her chest. Amber! Good heavens, you scared me. What are you doing home? Where's Madison? Robert asked, looking around as he lowered Lily to the ground. Madison is upstairs, I said, my voice steady despite the fury coursing through me. She's resting after spending 4 hours scrubbing the kitchen floor alone in an empty house. Eleanor's face flickered with something, guilt, perhaps, or simply annoyance at being caught, before settling into a defensive frown. Oh, don't be so dramatic. She made a mess and needed to clean it up. It's called teaching responsibility. Responsibility, I repeated, fighting to keep my voice level. You call leaving an 8-year-old child alone for hours while you go to an amusement park teaching responsibility? Robert stepped forward, setting down the bags he was carrying. No, Amber, it wasn't like that. Madison was being difficult this morning, throwing a tantrum about the juice. She needed some quiet time to think about her behavior. A tantrum? I asked. Madison told me she accidentally spilled juice and apologized immediately. Well, she would say that, wouldn't she? Eleanor sniffed, removing her jacket. I've noticed she tends to twist the truth when it suits her. Not like our Lily. The casual cruelty of the comparison made my blood boil, but I maintained my composure. Regardless of what happened with the juice, you left an 8-year-old child alone. Do you realize that's legally considered neglect in the state? I could call Child Protective Services right now. That got their attention. Robert's face paled slightly, while Eleanor's eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare, she hissed. We were only gone a few hours, and Madison is perfectly fine. Stop being hysterical. I'm not being hysterical, I replied. I'm being a mother. A mother who came home to find her daughter alone, terrified, and scrubbing floors on her hands and knees while being told she's not a real member of this family. Robert at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. We never said that, really. Because Madison told me that you both have repeatedly told her she doesn't have Henderson blood and should be grateful we took her in because nobody else wanted her. Eleanor rolled her eyes. Children exaggerate. And besides, it's simply factual that she's not related by blood. We've never been shy about that. She's 8 years old, I exclaimed, my voice rising despite my efforts. And she is related. She's your son's daughter. Scott adopted her legally. She bears your last name. What more do you want? Look, Robert interjected, clearly trying to defuse the situation. We may have made some poor choices today, but you're blowing this out of proportion. We've been taking care of Madison all week with no issues. No issues. I laughed incredulously. Madison told me everything. How you excluded her from outings, made her do chores while Lily played, gave Lily better food, new toys, more attention. She told me about being grabbed hard enough to leave bruises, being told she whines too much, being left alone yesterday too. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a pattern. Just then my phone rang. It was Scott. I answered and immediately put it on speaker. Scott, Eleanor said, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. Your wife is making ridiculous accusations. We've been taking wonderful care of Madison, but you know how challenging she can be. We simply had to discipline her today for misbehavior by leaving her alone for hours. Scott's voice crackled through the speaker, tight with controlled anger. While you took Lily to Adventure World, she needed to learn her lesson, Robert defended. And we wanted to take Lily out for a special day. What's wrong with that? What's wrong, Scott said slowly, is that you abandoned my daughter. You neglected her. You made her feel unwelcome in her own home and unwanted in her own family. Oh, please, Eleanor scoffed. She's being oversensitive, just like her mother. Honestly, Scott, I don't know what you expected. Blood is thicker than water, after all. It's only natural we have a special bond with Lily. The room went deadly silent. Even Eleanor seemed to realize she'd gone too far. What did you just say? Scott's voice was dangerously quiet. I just meant. Eleanor began, but Scott cut her off. I heard exactly what you meant, Mom, and it's unacceptable. Madison is my daughter. Not my stepdaughter. Not my adopted daughter. My daughter. And if you can't treat her with the same love and respect you show Lily, then you don't deserve to be in her life. Eleanor's face contorted with indignation. How dare you speak to me that way after everything we've done for you? We're your parents. And I'm Madison's parent, Scott replied firmly, which means my job is to protect her even from you. I took over then, keeping my voice calm but resolute. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack your things and leave our house tonight. You can go to a hotel or drive back home. I don't care which, but you're not staying here, and you will not have unsupervised access to Madison again. This is absurd. Eleanor sputtered. Robert, say something. Robert looked torn, his gaze moving between his wife and the phone. Son, I think we all need to calm down and discuss this rationally. We made a mistake today, but surely cutting us off from our granddaughter is an overreaction. It's not just today, I said. It's every comment, every comparison, every time you've made Madison feel less than. It's the fact that she genuinely believes she deserves to be treated worse than Lily because she's not a real Henderson. And it stops now. Scott added through the phone. I'm getting on a flight in an hour. By the time I get home, I expect you to be gone. We can discuss future supervised visits after Madison has had time to heal from this. Lily, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. Is Madison okay? Can I see her? Her innocent concern highlighted the absurdity of the situation. Even a child Lily's age recognized something was wrong. I knelt down to her level. Madison is okay, but she's resting right now. This isn't about you, Lily. You didn't do anything wrong. Eleanor seized on this, her voice rising dramatically. See what you're doing. You're driving a wedge between the cousins. You're breaking up this family. No, I said, standing back up. You did that when you decided one grandchild was more valuable than the other. This is ridiculous. Eleanor snapped, grabbing her purse. Come on, Robert. We don't have to stand here and be insulted. Where's Madison? Robert asked again, seeming genuinely concerned. Can we at least say goodbye? I shook my head. Not tonight. She's been through enough. I'll have her call you when she's ready. Eleanor let out a dramatic huff. Fine, but don't think this is the end of it. We'll be speaking to Scott privately, without your influence. Go ahead, I said. But you should know he's heard everything you've said tonight, and he stands with me and Madison 100%. As they gather their belongings, Eleanor turned to me one last time. You know, Amber, we always thought Scott could do better. Now we know we were right. The barb was meant to hurt, but I simply smiled. Funny, I was just thinking the same thing about Madison's grandparents. They left in a flurry of slammed doors and screeching tires, taking a confused Lily with them. As the sound of their car faded, I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The confrontation had gone about as well as could be expected, but it was just the beginning of what would likely be a long, painful family rift. Healing and hope, I climbed the stairs to Madison's room, finding her sitting on her bed with Mr. Flopsy, clearly having heard at least some of the commotion. Did Grandma and Grandpa leave because of me? She asked in a small voice. I sat beside her, pulling her close. No, sweetheart. They left because of their own bad choices. None of this is your fault. Will they come back? I chose my words carefully. Not to stay with us, no. But someday, if they can learn to be kind and respectful to everyone in our family, we might see them again for short visits. Madison nodded, seeming to accept this. Is Daddy coming home? Yes, he'll be here in a few hours. He can't wait to see you. As Madison drifted off to sleep that night, clutching Mr. Flopsy, I sat beside her bed, watching her peaceful face. I had always promised to protect her, and today I had kept that promise. There would be fallout, difficult conversations, and likely more confrontations to come. But seeing Madison sleep without fear or tension in her small body told me I had done the right thing. Some family ties, I realized, aren't worth preserving if they damage the people we love most. Scott arrived home just after midnight, exhausted from travel but wired with adrenaline. I met him at the door and fell into his embrace, finally allowing myself to cry now that Madison was asleep, and I didn't need to be strong for her. I can't believe they did this, Scott whispered, his voice rough with emotion. My own parents, how could they treat her that way? We sat at the kitchen table, the same floor Madison had been forced to scrub now clean beneath our feet. I recounted everything in detail, Madison's exact words, the state I'd found her in, the revelations of the past few days' treatment. Scott listened, his face growing increasingly pained. I knew they favored Lily, he said, running his hands through his hair. But I never imagined they'd go this far. Leaving her alone, telling her she's not real family. That's... He trailed off, unable to find words adequate to express his disgust. Have they called you? I asked. Scott nodded grimly. Multiple times. I texted that I'd speak to them tomorrow. I couldn't handle it tonight. The next morning, Madison was overjoyed to find Scott home. She threw herself into his arms with a squeal of delight that warmed my heart, a glimpse of her usual exuberance returning. Over breakfast, we had a family meeting, keeping the conversation age-appropriate but honest. Grandma and Grandpa made some very bad choices, Scott explained, holding Madison's small hand in his. And when adults make bad choices that hurt children, there have to be consequences. Like when I get a timeout? Madison asked. Similar, I said. Yes. Except their timeout is going to be much longer, and they won't be able to spend time with you unless another adult we trust is there too. Madison considered this. Are they mad at me? No, sweetheart, Scott assured her. They're probably upset about the situation, but none of this is your fault. I need you to really hear that, okay? Nothing you did caused this. Madison nodded, though I could tell she wasn't entirely convinced. We decided that family therapy would be essential moving forward, both for Madison to process what had happened and for us as parents to learn how best to support her. Later that day, while Madison was engaged with a movie, Scott called his parents. I sat beside him as he put the phone on speaker. We've been worried sick, Eleanor said immediately, after the way you and Amber threw us out last night. Mom, Scott interrupted firmly, I'm calling to make our position absolutely clear. What you and Dad did was neglect and emotional abuse. You left Madison alone for hours. You consistently treated her as less than Lily. You made her feel unwanted in her own family. That is unacceptable and will not happen again. Scott, you're blowing this out of proportion, Robert interjected. Yes, we made a mistake leaving her alone. We admit that. But all this talk of abuse is extreme. Is it? Scott challenged. You told my daughter that she's not really family, that she should be grateful anyone wanted her. Do you have any idea what that does to a child? We were just being honest, Eleanor defended. She's old enough to understand the difference between biological and adopted family. There is no difference. Scott exploded, his careful control finally slipping. Not in love, not in commitment, not in how she should be treated. Madison is my daughter in every way that matters. The conversation deteriorated from there, with Eleanor and Robert minimizing their actions, deflecting blame, and ultimately threatening to involve the extended family if we insisted on overreacting. Scott ended the call by reiterating our position. No unsupervised contact with Madison, and any future visits would be brief and monitored. True to their word, Eleanor and Robert rallied the family troops. Scott's aunts, uncles, and cousins began calling, most taking the in-laws' watered-down version of events at face value. They just wanted to give Lily a special day, one aunt insisted. Madison was being difficult, claimed an uncle who'd never even met her. The pressure was intense, but we stood firm. A few family members, notably Scott's brother Michael, seemed skeptical of the narrative being spun. Michael called a week after the incident. Lily's been upset, he said. She keeps asking about Madison and why everyone's fighting. What really happened, Scott? Scott told him everything, unvarnished. There was a long silence when he finished. Jesus, Michael finally breathed. Mom left her alone for hours and said those things about her not being real family? Yes, Scott confirmed. And there's more we haven't even told you. Another pause. I believe you, Michael said. Lily mentioned something about Madison having to clean while she got to play. I didn't think much of it at the time, but God, I'm sorry. Is Madison okay? That conversation marked a turning point. Michael became an unexpected ally, standing up to his parents and correcting the false narrative being spread through the family. He even arranged for Lily and Madison to have video calls, maintaining their cousin bond despite the adult conflict. A new equilibrium meanwhile, we focused on Madison's healing. The family therapist we found specialized in adoption and blended families. Dr. Lorraine Carter was warm but direct, creating a safe space for Madison to express feelings she'd been bottling up. Madison, how did you feel when Grandma said you weren't real family? Dr. Carter asked during one session. Madison clutched Mr. Flopsy tighter. Sad and scared, like maybe Daddy would stop loving me too someday. Never, Scott whispered fiercely, his eyes filled with tears. Never in a million years. Over the weeks that followed, we learned that the incident we discovered was merely the most extreme example of a pattern of differential treatment that had been going on for years. Small moments that had seemed insignificant at the time now formed a clear pattern of behavior designed to make Madison feel less than. The good news, Dr. Carter told us, is that Madison is young and resilient. With consistent support and love from you both, she can and will recover from this. The work you're doing now is literally rewiring her brain to understand that she is worthy, loved, and equal. Scott and I committed ourselves fully to that work, creating new family traditions that celebrated our unique family story. We read books about adoption, talked openly about different types of families, and made sure Madison knew her origin story was one of love, not loss. Slowly, we began to see our daughter emerge from the shadow of insecurity that had been cast over her. The light returned to her eyes. Her laughter became more frequent, and the constant need for reassurance gradually faded. She was healing, and so were we. 6 months after that fateful day, our family had settled into a new normal. Madison was flourishing in therapy. Scott and I had strengthened our united front as parents, and the relationship with his parents had evolved into something cautiously manageable, if not entirely repaired. The most significant breakthrough came unexpectedly during a supervised lunch at a neutral restaurant. Madison had gone to the restroom with me, and Scott had stepped away to take a work call, leaving Robert and Eleanor briefly alone with their thoughts. When we returned, Eleanor was uncharacteristically quiet. She picked at her food for several minutes before suddenly addressing Madison directly. I owe you an apology, she said, her voice wavering slightly. What we did, was wrong. Very wrong. I should never have left you alone. And I should never have said those hurtful things about you not being family. Madison stared at her grandmother, clearly surprised by this sudden contrition. It's okay, she offered automatically, the response of a child trained to smooth over adult emotions. No, it's not okay, Robert interjected gently. Your grandmother is right. We treated you unfairly, and there's no excuse for that. We're very sorry, Madison. I watched my daughter carefully, ready to intervene if needed, but she seemed to be processing their words thoughtfully. Why did you do it? She asked finally, the simple, direct question that only a child would have the courage to ask. Eleanor looked stricken, exchanging a glance with Robert before answering. I think I was holding on to old-fashioned ideas about what makes a family. I was wrong. Being family isn't about blood. It's about love, and your daddy loves you very much, which means you are every bit a Henderson as Lily or anyone else. It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't address the favoritism or the emotional abuse, but it was a start, and I could see from Madison's face that it meant something to her. Does this mean we can be friends now? Madison asked cautiously. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I would like that very much. That conversation marked a turning point, though the road ahead remained long and complicated. Eleanor began individual therapy at Dr. Carter's recommendation, working through her own deeply ingrained beliefs about family and bloodlines. Robert, who had always been more passive in the dynamic, became more actively engaged in building a relationship with Madison based on her actual personality and interests, not comparisons to Lily. The cousins' relationship continued to blossom, free from the toxic influence of favoritism that had previously tainted it. Lily, now understanding more about what had happened, became surprisingly protective of Madison. Grandma, you have to ask Madison what she wants too, not just me, she'd say when Eleanor slipped into old patterns. The accountability from her beloved biological granddaughter often seemed to impact Eleanor more profoundly than anything Scott, or I could say. Scott's relationship with his parents had been fundamentally altered. The blind trust was gone, replaced by cautious vigilance. But as they demonstrated consistent effort to change, he gradually allowed himself to hope for real reconciliation. I never thought I'd have to parent my own parents, he confessed to me one night. But that's essentially what we're doing, teaching them how to behave appropriately with our child. You're breaking a cycle, I pointed out. Think about it. Your parents probably learned these attitudes from their parents. By standing firm now, you're ensuring Madison won't carry these harmful beliefs forward. The extended family, which had initially rallied around Eleanor and Robert, gradually came to understand the gravity of what had occurred. Michael and his wife became our strongest allies, often serving as bridges between the two sides of the family divide. Mom admitted to me that she doesn't know why she treated Madison that way, Michael told Scott during a brother's lunch. She said she never consciously decided to favor Lily, but she just did. I think she's genuinely trying to understand it now. Madison's healing was our primary focus throughout this period. The emotional wounds inflicted by years of subtle and not so subtle discrimination ran deep, but children are remarkably resilient when given the right support. I used to think there was something wrong with me, Madison confided during a family therapy session. Like I wasn't good enough to be a real Henderson. But now I know that's not true. I am a real Henderson, and a real Wilson too. I have two families that love me. Her words brought tears to my eyes. After everything she'd been through, my daughter had emerged with wisdom beyond her years and a stronger sense of self. The most important lesson by the 1-year mark after the incident, we had established a new family equilibrium. Eleanor and Robert were allowed supervised visits, which were gradually increasing in duration as they demonstrated consistent respect for our boundaries. Madison felt safe with them again, though she remained more guarded than she was with other family members. The goal isn't to pretend this never happened, Dr. Carter reminded us during a family session that included the grandparents. The goal is to learn from it, grow from it, and build healthier relationships moving forward. Eleanor nodded, her usual defensiveness notably absent. I never want Madison to feel unwanted or less than again. I'm still learning, but I'm committed to doing better. For the first time, I believed her. We celebrated Madison's 9th birthday with a party that included both sides of the family. Watching her blow out candles, surrounded by people who truly valued her for exactly who she was, I reflected on the painful journey that had brought us here. Finding Madison alone that day, scrubbing floors while being told she wasn't real family, had been one of the most horrific moments of my life. But the aftermath, the boundaries we set, the therapy we embraced, the difficult conversations we had ultimately strengthened our family in ways I couldn't have imagined. Most importantly, Madison now knew with absolute certainty that she was loved, protected, and worth fighting for. No child should ever have to learn that lesson through trauma. But the lesson itself was invaluable. As I watched her laugh with Lily, accept a carefully chosen gift from Eleanor, and beam at Scott's enthusiastic photography, I knew we had done the right thing. We had refused to accept the unacceptable. We had protected our daughter when she couldn't protect herself. And in doing so, we had taught her the most important lesson of all, that love isn't about blood or biology. It's about choice, commitment, and unwavering support. If you're watching this, and have ever felt like you had to accept unfair treatment of your child for the sake of family harmony, I hope our story gives you courage. Standing up for your child might be difficult, uncomfortable, or even heartbreaking in the moment, but it's always worth it. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family to protect your children? How did you handle it? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.